Namaskar, Nilesh Oak here with another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. Today we have exciting topic of the jaws of Jupiter and then the jigsaw puzzle of Mahabharata. This will in fact be introduction to the jaws of Jupiter, and think of this as a transition from the exciting Mars evidence that I discussed over a series of sessions, different episodes in this series. And I want all of you to watch them before coming to the jaws of Jupiter evidence. Then only you will start understanding these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. So let's begin. This one, by the way, is part 18, session 18 in Shraddha and Pradnya series. All right, so let me go back here. Okay, part 18, Shraddha and Pradnya. Jaws of Jupiter and jigsaw puzzle. Of course, we are talking of the Mahabharata evidence, Vyasa's Mahabharata. More than 125,000 shlok that we have access to today. Naturally, with some variations from different manuscripts, some manuscripts have additional shlok that do not exist in other manuscripts. So certainly Pathabhed, many other things, some manuscripts might have lost certain shlok. Vyasadev, or rather Vaishampayan and Romaharshana Sauti talk about 100,000 shlok long Mahabharata. Then Vaishampayan separated all the Upa-Akhyan from this grand 100,000 shlok long Mahabharata and created a 24,000 shlok long Bharata Samhita. And of course, this grand Mahabharata text, again, Vaishampayan tells us, has 8,800 Guda Shloka, which very few individuals understand the meaning of it. And in some sense, our effort, our humble effort, my effort, but effort of a few genuine Mahabharata dating researchers or Mahabharata researchers, is to find the mystery behind these verses. Okay, what is the Guda, or what is that curious thing that is embedded into the shloka? Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutuhalat. That is how this Grantha is being described. To the specific context, or in the specific context of the dating of the Mahabharata, as to say, when did actually the Mahabharata war happen? We are looking at astronomy evidence. We will also look at non-astronomy evidence. But as far as the precise and accurate dating of the historical event of Mahabharata is concerned, we have no other option but to evaluate, analyze scientifically, test logically, bring it together, the astronomy evidence. So part of this, we quickly looked at. When I say quickly, there were series of episodes, and that's how this can be done. Okay, this is not ordinary stuff. So we looked at 8 specific references of Mars from the Mahabharata text. So let me start with those. And now you will see the nature, okay, of this jigsaw puzzle that the Mahabharata evidence is. Okay, you cannot look at this evidence in isolation. Okay, so you have to look for the pieces that bring these different descriptions together. Then you have to find a way to test them in a scientific fashion, bring those outputs logically together. Okay, and then many other aspects of Vijnana Buddhi, or scientific acumen or science, come into the picture. Everything that you are doing, is this consistent with your original theory? What is your theory? Okay, does your theory make these descriptions objectively testable, like empirical, or is your theory a simple trope to avoid objective empirical testing of this evidence? Okay, so these are all the criterias of science or scientific acumen that come into the picture. Mahabharata Mars mystery, total of 8 specific pieces of evidence. And as I have said, it is worth repeating and re-repeating, is that no other Mahabharata dating researcher dare discuss all 8 of them, which is a basic requirement. But even any individual piece of this evidence, any of these 8 pieces of evidence, no other Mahabharata dating researcher will discuss it individually. And naturally, no other Mahabharata researchers discusses this together. Of course, discussing all of them is important. Now, because Mahabharata text is very old, now we know it is from more than 7,500 years old. There are Pathabhed, there are different manuscripts. And some people, when they are caught live to say, somebody will ask them, how come you are not discussing this reference from Mahabharata? Then they pull these foolish arguments, such as that of a Pathabhed, or they will say, oh, I'm not looking at Gita Press edition, I'm only looking at the Bhandarkar critical edition. Well, none of these arguments fly, because whether somebody uses a Gita Press edition or somebody uses a Bhandarkar critical edition, using any of these individual options, it can be shown how any claim for the Mahabharata dating other than 5561 BC is wrong. So please, before getting into the jaws of Jupiter, do spend time watching all the relevant episodes related to this Mars evidence. Okay, it's very important. Now, for that jigsaw puzzle connection, or even a crossword puzzle connection, remember we solve a certain portion of the crossword or a jigsaw, and what we solve gives us some clues for solving the additional evidence. The connecting piece here, and there are many actually, but connecting piece here as it relates to Jupiter is this evidence number 3. Maghas Swangarako Vakra Shravanaicha Brahaspati. So what it is saying is, whatever Angarak, that is Mars, is doing near Nakshatra Magha, is what Brahaspati, Jupiter, is doing near Nakshatra Shravan. And what is it that they are doing? They are doing a Vakra motion, oblique crossing of a planet near ecliptic or across the ecliptic. So that's a connection with the jaws of Jupiter. But as I said, if you again look at any crossword puzzle or a jigsaw puzzle, what do you see? A particular word might provide the clues for solving 2, 3 other puzzles, okay, part of the puzzles, either in jigsaw puzzle mode or in a crossword puzzle mode. Similarly, not only the Brahaspati or Jupiter with this Mars evidence, but we also have additional evidence. For example, the position, the kind of a final position, if you want to call it, a final position in the sense of when Vyasadeva more or less stopped discussing the evidence of that particular celestial body, in this case Mars, is here. Vakrano vakram krutvam cha shravane pavaka prabha brahma rashi samavrutta lohitango vyavastita. Finally, after going vakra anuvakra motion, this planet Lohitanga, Mars, came near Nakshatra Shravana and aligned itself right along Brahma Rashi, Nakshatra, Brahma Rashi, Nakshatra of Brahma, Brahmyam Nakshatra, and that Nakshatra is, of course, Abhijit. Then we also have, so we know the position of Mars based on that. But that's not the only clue. And that's how we solve these puzzles, jigsaw or crossword. Okay, we know what Jupiter did at the same time, okay, at the time of the Mahabharata war. But even during the short duration of those 18 days, we know that Angarak was somewhere in the vicinity of Buddha. That is, Mars was somewhere in the vicinity of Mercury. We also know that that same Mars was also somewhere in the vicinity of Shukra, that is Venus. And on that is on the first day and the first day, and on the 18th day, we also know that all three of them were together in the vicinity of each other. Bhrigu Suno Dhara Putro Shashi Jena Samanvito. So even a short-term evidence like this, okay, although this by itself is not capable of giving us the year 5561 BCE, it can corroborate or not corroborate a specific claim. It perfectly corroborates for 5561 BCE. But this evidence is powerful to falsify other claims. And we are going to do this, okay, eventually. But it will be a long time. In the meantime, don't wait for me to show this to you. You can look at any other claim other than 5561 BCE that is your fancy, let's say, or for some reason you feel curious, why this individual is claiming that year. Get access to some astronomy software, look at their research work, and start comparing against this Mars evidence. In fact, what you're going to find is much of this Mars evidence they simply do not discuss. And when asked, they simply run away. They will change the goalpost, digress the issue, get very personal, start criticizing me personally, what is called ad hominem. Then if I just give them a small reply, then they cannot handle, even a simple criticism of theirs. So then they will say, oh, I am doing an ad hominem attack, and lots of fun. Okay, let's move on. So starting with that Shravanacha Brospati, let's see the common area there. Okay, before that, let's see how this jigsaw puzzle of the Mahabharata is taking shape. So where does this discussion begin? Does Vakra or Vakri means retrograde? And I asserted, and now I have shown through this series, that Vakra, Vakri, as stated in Mahabharata text, does not mean retrograde, but it means oblique crossing of a planet across the ecliptic. All right. So retrograde, but if Mars is being described as going Vakra, Vakri twice, and if that's not retrograde, is there a retrograde motion of Mars described by Vasudev in the Mahabharata text? Of course it is. Dhruva prajvalitam goram apasavya pravartate chitra swatyantare chaiva dishtita parushagraha. Okay, so in that context, out of those 8 references, we have to take into account 2 references near Chitra Swati, and also the Visheshanahi Varshneya Chitra Pidayate Graha from the Udyoga Parva, which no other Mahabharata researchers again dare discuss. Of course, they don't discuss Dhruva Prajvalita Ghoram Apasavya Pravartate either. Okay, what does that mean, and which planet? Well, the planet is exactly given. That is Lohitango, Vakrano Vakram Krutvam Cha Shravane Pavaka Prabha Brahma Rashi Samavritta Lohitango Vyavastita. So we have 2 references there out of 8 explained through this Mars retrograde motion. And where is the range? I mean, over which range Mars has traveled during the time of the Mahabharata war? When I say during the time of Mahabharata war, I mean 5561 BCE plus minus 1 year. Okay, that's what Vasudev is saying. That's how long the observations have been made. Samvatsara Stainancho Graho Prajvalito Ubo. Okay. Now, so Magha through Brahma Rashi is what we can broadly describe the position of Mars through the Mahabharata time. Then we, just like I mentioned on the previous page, there is a conjunction in a loose sense, we are saying it. Okay, these Mercury and Mars could be seen in the vicinity and the first day of the war. Of course, again on the 18th day of the war. So this is like, so we have 2 references here. This is the 3rd reference. Then we also have Venus described in vicinity of Mars. Okay, so that's 2, 3, 4. Also, sorry, before I go back, also 5 on the 18th day. All the 3 planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, are together. We already talked about the position of Mars. That is what? Brahma Rashi Samavritta Lohitango Vyavastita, where near Shravane Pavaka Prabha, in the region of Shravana and Brahma Rashi, Shravana and Abhijit. So that is there. So those are a total of 6 references. Now we are left with the 2. How are those explained? Beautiful. That's where that connection with the Jupiter. Okay, Mars is described going Vakra twice. Krutva Changarako Vakra Jeshthaya Madhusudana Anuradha Prarthayate Maitram Samshava Manniva. Okay, and again Magha Swangarako Vakra and then Shravanecha Brahaspati. That's where that connection is. That's how jigsaw puzzle is solved. That's how we solve crossword puzzles. Okay, we already have some clue for Mercury, we already have some clue for Venus, and now for Jupiter. And we are going to solve each of these. Okay. All right. So the next one that and Jupiter, where is Jupiter? Jupiter is not going to move much. Okay. In fact, the descriptions of Jupiter also tell us the range over which Jupiter is described. It is described in the context of Nakshatra Vishakha. So again, remember, I told you, you must have your nakshatras by heart and in the proper sequence. And next stage, you also should be able to visualize actual yoga taras in the sky as you travel in your mind, or your eyes travel across or along the path of the ecliptic. Okay, so as soon as somebody says Vishakha, I said, well, there is one yoga tara right on the ecliptic, one slightly to the north of it. If somebody says Swati, with the eyes closed, you should be able to say after Chitra, immediately after Chitra yoga tara, but way up in the north is that Arcturus, the Swati Yogatara. Okay, what about Anuradha? Oh, just slightly south of the ecliptic. What about Jeshta? Slightly south of the ecliptic, but further south than Anuradha. What about Mula? Even further south. What about Purvashada? Oh, slightly up, but still to the south of the ecliptic. What about Uttarashada? Similar thing, going towards ecliptic, but still to the south. What about Shravan? Go to the other side of the ecliptic, up in the north. That's the Shravan Altair, okay, the Yoga Tara of Shravan, and so on. That's how you should be able to visualize. Then you will understand this. So Jupiter is described in the context of Vishakha, and then Jeshta, and then Shravan. So think of it, Vishakha, Anuradha, Jeshta, Mula, Purvashada, Uttarashada, Shravan. Okay, so there are these 5-6 nakshatra in which context Jupiter is described. Now, Jupiter takes 12 years to complete one round, which means what? It's going to be, approximately speaking, average, going to be in one Rashi, 30-degree zodiac, for 1 year. Okay, so now what is this period? This period is indeed of about 2 years. Okay, plus minus 1 year. That's what actually tells us. Same thing for Saturn, and same thing based on the Mars evidence itself. Okay, we will not go into these nitty-gritty details, but these are very important, and if required, we will go into them. But before we get into more precise and accurate discussions, you also have to understand this broader perspective and not simply listening to me. I mean, I can assure you there is a limit to gaining knowledge just from listening to someone. In fact, in Sanskrit, we have a shlok which says, how do we gain knowledge? And it's divided into 4 parts. It says, some you get from a guru, and I may not remember all the 4 parts. Okay. So yeah, actually some you get from the guru, 1/4 you get from the guru, 1/4 you get from the sahapati. Okay. From peers, peer learning. Okay. 1/4 is that you get from the grantha, the other experts, and so on and so forth. Okay. And of course, through your swadhyaya, that's what we mean by other grantha, because how are you going to get knowledge from grantha? Is through your own abhyasa, swadhyaya, tapascharya. And the 1/4, you get it through actual living a life. Meaning application of this knowledge, such as what I am doing or what I did for last 30 years with the dating of Mahabharata, Ramayana, Veda, Sushruta, and Indian astronomy, antiquity of Indian astronomy, antiquity of world civilizations, and so on. All right. So now the additional ones is related to Saturn. Now Mars is not directly shown connected to the Saturn. However, one aspect of it, which is to say the retrograde motion, and we are going to see as we go through this jigsaw puzzle that retrograde motion is for Mars, for Jupiter, for Saturn, and for Venus is been described by Vyasadeva in the Mahabharata text, but not that Vakri business. Okay, very interesting. Saturn, we have lots of references. We're going to look at that. And then there is something else that connects Saturn, that connects Jupiter, but that also connects a comet that was settled near Pusha. And this just comet evidence, again, we will explore it at some point, by itself just shows you how sophisticated Indian astronomy was, what kind of telescopic ability they must have had. Okay, because without such a telescopic ability, this observation is simply impossible. And there are additional observations in the Mahabharata text, such as 7 planets near sun, 7 planets going away from the sun, 7 planets attacking the moon. And those observations cannot be explained without appreciating, without comprehending, and without accepting a supreme telescopic ability of ancient Indian astronomers, definitely going back to 7,500 years ago. That's not to say it wasn't existing before, but this is a clear, crisp evidence of this phenomenal, impressive telescopic ability. Okay, so at some point we'll look at this comet near Pusha, but the way it is connected in this jigsaw puzzle is through similar descriptions in the context of Saturn, that Tishtita and Akramya, similar descriptions in the context of a Jupiter. Okay, Tishtita and Akramya. All right. So then also that PIDA, and I don't know if you're following Twitter. There is this individual. He is he's becoming unstable. And he asked me in Twitter to explain, hey, can you explain what is your PIDA interpretation? And so I responded to him with a link to a video that Aditya Satsangiji and myself, we did on Sattology channel on the PIDA. So that PIDA, and once I gave him that evidence, he's saying, oh, that's your interpretation. I said, yeah, that's what original research is. Because if you read Gita press edition and the Hindi translation or any other translations available, if you read Kishore Mohan Ganguly's translation of Mahabharata in English, if you read Pandit Satavadekarji's translation. In fact, I couldn't find Pandit Satavadekarji's translation for the Adhyay 2 and 3 of Bhishma Parva. I don't know why. If anyone has it, just send me that PDF file. If you read any other existing translation, I mean, bring it on. You are going to find how much variation is there between their translations. So, because everyone is trying to make sense of what it is, but you can just translate in certain way, and that's not the end of it. That is the beginning of it. Now that the way you have interpreted is how you have to show through empirical means, through mathematical calculations, through astronomy simulation, since that is relevant here, and how that matches, corroborates, gets validated for any specific claim that one individual is making, such as when I say it's 5561 BC. And that's what I showed in that particular video. And again, of course, we will be doing that here. The point is that PIDA it appears in the connection of what? Not just Saturn, not just Jupiter. It also occurs in the context of sun and moon. Okay, and something very specific. Actually, there are many PIDA references, but one specific PIDA reference is centered around Nakshatra Rohini. Sun and moon together giving a PIDA to Nakshatra Rohini. That's what Vyasadeva is describing. Then, that is on the first day of the war. Then on the 17th day of the war, Vyasadeva says, after Karna died, and there was a sunset. After the sunset, now Jupiter was giving PIDA to Nakshatra Rohini exactly in the same fashion the sun and moon were giving PIDA to Nakshatra Rohini. And then Saturn is also described actually twice as giving PIDA to Nakshatra Rohini. Now guess what? Based on additional evidence, we already know the position of a Jupiter. It cannot be anywhere else except between Vishakha and Shravana, ending with somewhere near Shravana, because that's the direction. Vishakha, Anuradha, Jeshta, Mula, Purvashada, Uttarashada, Shravana. So if we are going to call it somewhere in the context of a Shravan, then somewhere in the vicinity of a Shravan, but starting somewhere with Vishaka, context of Vishaka. That's the direction of a nakshatra. That is why you need to know the sequence of nakshatra and in what way the planets move through this nakshatra space. What about Saturn? We have sufficient evidence to say that the Saturn is near nakshatra Falguni, Bhagam nakshatra akramya suryaputrena pidate. And then we also have that Shvetogras tatha chitra samati kramya tishtati. Okay, so we know that Saturn is near in the space of between Falguni, between Bhaga nakshatra, that's Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni, through nakshatra Chitra. So their position is fixed. Jupiter's position is fixed meaning within the range. And Sun's position at the time of Mahabharata war is also fixed, which is what? It is near Jeshta. Okay, somewhere in the vicinity of a Jeshta, plus minus 1-2 nakshatras. So Sun, Moon together are giving Pida to Rohini from a Jeshta. Jupiter is giving a Pida to Rohini from Jeshta, Shravana area, and Saturn is giving Pida to Rohini from Falguni through Chitra. We have to understand this in consistent fashion. This guy who asked me the question, as soon as I gave this evidence, he said, "Oh, I never give the evidence." As soon as I gave the evidence, the guy starts running in all 10 different directions, okay, changing the goalpost, calling me names, and everything is there for anyone to watch this and see this on Twitter. So enjoy that. All right. So Surya's, as I said, the Surya, the sun's position is near Purvashada, that is Jeshta plus minus 2 nakshatras. Okay, so that's there. Okay, so what is this jaws of Jupiter? The jaws of Jupiter are specifically for references. Keep that in mind. They are also connected with other planets. Okay, for example, we started here that Jupiter is connected with Mars in terms of the commonality of their Vakra motion. Okay, so that's the connection there. Now, if you come to this reference here, two planets. Who are those two planets? Brihaspati and Shaneshchara, Jupiter and Saturn. They, Vasudev describes them settled for a year, that is to say a very long period. Okay, settles, sthai, sthira. Do you know what is the meaning of sthira? That is another characteristics anytime a planet goes retrograde. Of course, the motion of Saturn is very slow. So is Jupiter. Among all the visible planets, the slowest two planets are what? Jupiter and Saturn. So as far as the naked eye visibility is concerned, they are going to be the most slowest. So they always appear as if like they are sthira, sthaino, sthira, sthita in particular space of the sky for a long time. Okay, so Jupiter is going to be in that one range of 30 degrees, one Rashi for up to a year. Saturn is going to be in that particular region of one nakshatra for a year. Forget Rashi. Okay, just one nakshatra for a year. So therefore, they are described as a sthito or sthaino and so on, and observed in same area for a long time. Where is that area? Vishakhayo samipasto, in the vicinity of a Vishakha. They are also called Tamra Aruna Shikho. Okay, Shikho, you know, the Shikha that gets the hair, you know, the ponytail, like gets extended. These are extensions, and we will look at the detailed meaning of Shikha, you know, in the various contexts and what does that mean. So we are talking about the planets with their extensions beyond them, beyond their central body, extension outside. Prajvalanta, okay, they are bright, which is what happens during the retrograde. And in some fashion, they are described in the context of Saptarshi, Saptarshanam Udaranam Samavachadya Vaiprabham. What is the reason for they being described in the context of Saptarshi? We are going to look at that. That's the jaws of Jupiter, that no other Mahabharata researchers dare discuss this. In fact, two people make a very humorous and disastrous attempt. I'll come to that if time provides in this, because otherwise the video gets too big or too long. But let me quickly go down to the additional two references that, again, no Mahabharata researchers either shows awareness in the first place, and if they are aware of it, they don't want to talk about it, they do not talk about it. And if you hold them to it, hold their feet to it, they will find some excuse and run away. They will change the goalpost. Okay, if you don't think I am telling you the truth here. Go look at the dating work of any Mahabharata researchers of last 300 years. Any Mahabharata researchers, exceptions none. You will not see that person talking about, not just talking about, but talking and then explaining. For example, reference Bhishma Parva 3.15, Shamo Graha Prajwalita, Sadhuma Sahapavaka, Endra Tejasvi Nakshatram, Jeshtam Akramya Tishtati. Tishtati is also that being in one place is a characteristic of a retrograde. Granted, it can come in a different way, such as we will see when we talk about the Dhumaketu, the comet, also Tishtati near Nakshatra Pushya. That's not about retrograde. That's about it's settled forever, practically, for 75 years in that one place. That is a Tishtati. But when it comes that Tishtati in the context of a Graha, the planet, then it is referring to the retrograde motion. And you're going to see the consistency of that Tishtati. Okay. Also, when it is near a certain nakshatra, such as say Indra Tejasvi Nakshatra, the Jeshta Nakshatra, which means it's going retrograde in the vicinity of that nakshatra. No other Mahabharata researchers discusses this. The last reference of the jaws of Jupiter is Karna, from Karna Parva. This is on the 17th day of the war. Karna has been killed by Arjun. Then at the end of the day, there is a sunset. And after sunset, it says, Brospati Rohini Samprapidya Babhuva Chandrarka Samanavarnam. After sunset, Brospati started giving pida to Nakshatra Rohini, similar to, by becoming similar to, by looking similar to Chandra and Surya, Chandrarka, okay, Samanavarnam. What is that context? That context is the moon and sun doing the same pida to Rohini on the first day of the war. So that's how we have to bring these all pieces together. Okay, so that's the idea. That's the menu that's coming. All right. Now, what I want to show you, just by way of introducing how you need to study this. These are 3 shloka from the critical edition, the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute's critical edition, created over last 100 years. Okay, it was a very long project that lasted for a few decades, beginning in 1920s, 30s, somewhere, all the way coming to 1960s and 70s. Okay, so these are all 3 verses from the 3rd Adhyay of a Bhishma Parva. What a fascinating, wonderful job these folks did, okay, some 70 years ago. So here, Shamo Graha Prajwalita Sadhuma Sahapavaka Indram Tejasvi Nakshatram Jeshtam Akramya Tishtati. This is the final form of the verse that they selected for their critical edition. But the wonderful work they did, or they have done, and that's the nature of critical edition, is any variations without going into what might have caused those variations. Okay, that's a different subject. We have discussed this many times. For example, instead of Shamo here, in some other manuscript, the word used is a Shveto, and so on. Okay, so for example, instead of Sahapavaka, instead of that, in some other manuscript, it was Ivapavaka. Okay, and say Jeshtamya instead of Jeshta Akramya. In another edition, another manuscript, it was Jeshta Avrutya Tishtati. Okay, now notice, sometime of course the meaning may change, but in this case, even when there is a part of it, actually the original meaning of the word is not always changing. Directionally, it can remain the same. And you can do this for other words. If you want to go through the specific variations, you can pause the video, watch this, and then move forward. Ditto for this verse here on the 14th. So, Bhagyam Nakshatra Akramya. Again, I should tell you a story. I mean, there are lots of funny story with Mahabharata dating researchers. Again, the length of the video gets bigger. But for example, one Mahabharata researcher, again, remember, instead of being dedicated to extract every possible evidence, whether in the context of astronomy or non-astronomy, extracting every evidence and getting excited to find a ways to test it, majority of the Mahabharata researchers are actually interested in finding ways to get rid of the evidence. Get rid of the evidence. Why? So that whatever that one piece, they can say, hey, only this evidence exists and this evidence matches for my date. Okay, that is the atrociously nonsensical game that is going on for a very long time. So for example, this one Mahabharata researchers, I will not mention the name. I will leave it to you to guess it or find out through your own research. Bhagyam nakshatra akramya surya putrena pidate. Another time I told you, Somasya putro abhidaya tiryak. Okay, it's very clear. Somasya putra, Somaputra is a Mercury. But because these Mahabharata researchers cannot show how the Somaputra is doing Abhyudaya, even Somaputra being visible for his claimed date, which is not his original, this fellow cannot show even Mercury visible after sunset because it's on the other side. Okay, the fun just begins there. But he takes an alternate reading, Yamasya Putra, and then he says, Yamasya Putra, what is that? I don't know what that planet is. My dear friend, now unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago. You can look at the Somasya Putra. There is alternate editions which are talking Somasya Putra. So why not take Somasya Putra, which means Mercury, and see if it can be explained. And if it doesn't explain, then you should know that there is another additional reason for you to be wrong. Okay, don't throw away the reference. Don't fool people. Show the reference. It's perfectly okay to say, yeah, this reference does not match for my date, 5561 BC. That's what I have done. In all three books of mine, there is a chapter dedicated. It says conflicting observations in all three chapters, where prima facie, the evidence from the appropriate text does not match for my dating claim. I have written it there. But lo and behold, that's what happens. Satyameva jayate nanrutam satyena pantha vitato devayana. Okay, if you are walking on the path of Satya, the path becomes broader and broader. The so-called conflicting observations, which I thought prima facie do not match for my date, actually on a introspection and when additional evidence is brought out, they not only match, but they actually led to additional insights that no other Mahabharata researchers had. Okay, that's the beauty. So don't be surprised, don't be suddenly go into a depression by looking at the conflicting observations. It's telling you something. It may tell you who might have entered, who might have added that observation, even if it doesn't match. What was the mental thinking of that individual when he or she added, what he or she was thinking in terms of the timing and so on and so forth. You learn so much. Anyways, so I wanted you to show this. This is how the critical edition can be studied, that there is a verse at the top. And so verse number 15, in the bottom footnotes, you're going to see the variations. And these variations are extremely useful, extremely important. For example, sorry, I digressed. I was telling the story of Mahabharata researchers with this humorous Bhagyam Nakshatra Akramya Surya Putrena Pidate. Just like these Mahabharata researchers tried to get rid of this observation on the 17th day of the war. Soma, what is that? Somasya Putra Abhyudaya Tiryak, because he cannot show it for his date. He did the exactly same game with this observation, Bhagyam Nakshatra Akramya Surya Putrena Pidate. Hold on. Just the word Bhagyam. Now, is there a Bhagyam Nakshatra in the 27, 28 Nakshatra system? Directly, there is no, literally Bhagyam. Is there anything that comes close to it? Yeah. Bhagam Nakshatra Akramya, Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni. Those both are goes by the name Bhaga Nakshatra. Okay, and then certain Indian texts you will find the Bhaga is applied only to Purva Falguni. In other texts, the Bhaga is applied only to Uttara Falguni as the Bhaga as a Devata of that nakshatra. And that's how it is. But why would this individual, this researcher, not look at, say, critical edition? Critical edition, because in one place you get to see, you have access as if to many different manuscripts of Mahabharata. So if one does that, so what you find here is, yes, instead of Bhagyam, there is a word Bhaga. But also notice all the variations, Patha Bheda that has happened. Bhogya, Bhaga, Bhagra, Bhagyam. Hey, you know what? Any of this would have occurred there instead of a Bhagyam as a first common sense way of doing research. You said, Bhagyam, there is nothing. For example, Bhogya, there is nothing, or Bhaga, there is no nakshatra with that name. But which one could it be? Which one could it be closest to? And suppose if that person puts that, now understands that therefore Surya Putra, again, Surya Putra is what? In astronomy, it's well known, it is the Saturn. Even there, people have played games. Another professor, okay, another professor, again, I will let you guess the name, okay. He says, Surya Putrena, yeah, I mean, that means Saturn, but, we are not so sure. Or he is not so sure. Okay. But at least he was somewhat showed some decency to say that, yeah, Surya Putra is indeed known as Saturn. Why would people not know that? Because they don't study, or they are in this business of getting rid of the observations so that they can push their agenda. Okay, Nilanjana, those of you who chant Shani mantra, right? Nilanjana Samabhasam Ravi Putram Yamagrajam. Ravi Putram, that's a Surya Putra. It is there, right? Okay. So this is how you study it. I just wanted to introduce you to something else to add to your Abhyasa, Swadhyaya, and Tapasya. With that, this is done. Again, my books on Amazon. And also, if you are in India, through Subbu Publications, definitely support them. If you are thinking of writing a book, if you are already in the middle of writing a book, and that is related to the Indic revolution, Indic civilization, Dharma civilization, it can be fiction, it can be non-fiction, and you are looking for a dharmic publisher, then look no further. Okay, contact Subbu Publications. That is not a guarantee, by the way, that they will publish it. I mean, they have to maintain their standards. But what I have seen is that they have definitely shown a lot of flexibility in terms of accommodating, okay, different authors, different types of books, different genre, as long as, broadly speaking, you are following this path of Satya. Okay, so that's that. Now, Marathi translation of the historic Ram, also known as 12,209 BC. Two different names, identical content, is scheduled for Ram Navami, 30th of March, 2023. The publications and all the details, the translator, everyone will be announced very soon. The Kannada translation is of the book, When Did the Mahabharata War Happen, is coming out sooner. In fact, I have to do some work to give them what they have requested from me. So I'll be doing that also. So you will have to excuse my absence from YouTube and social media if that's what I need to do. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. I will see you in another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. Namaskar.